4:01 on Thursday, December 9th. So the Commission on Equitable Housing and Development has now commenced. It is, I think I just said December 9th at 4 p.m. This meeting is held virtually due to COVID-19 to allow for social distancing and to protect the public health. As we continue our efforts in meeting remotely, we ask all commissioners and guests to mute yourselves until called upon to speak to avoid feedback and background noise. For those of you who are dialed in using a call-in number, to unmute to speak, dial *6 on your phone. Also, prior to speaking, please announce who you are to identify yourself. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded. We ask that you use only the chat function to request to speak or to announce that you are leaving the meeting so we can track the quorum. Also, in order to comply with state open meeting laws, attendance and votes will be done by way of roll call using audio, not by using the chat function. So I'm now going to do roll call. Michael Edmonds.
Present.
Olga Flores.
Present.
Shay.
Present.
Shreya Jimenez.
Present, thanks.
Jim Toffel, I'm here. Liz Wilson.
I'm here.
Jay Young.
Here.
Mindy Bernstein. Okay, Mindy is absent. Lori Mazurbo.
Present.
And Evangelina Paz. Evangelina is also absent. Okay, our ex officio members. Maggie Amato Tejas.
Present.
Sorry, Maggie, butchering your last name. Wendy Asher. Marianne Bierling. Marianne's absent. Mark Clark.
Present.
Vicky Casino. Okay, Vicky is absent. Marcos Ismail.
Present.
Betty Villegas. Corin Manning.
Present.
Okay, and Liz Morales is also absent today. Okay, so our first item on the agenda is to review and adopt the meeting minutes from November 4th that have been posted on the website. Are there any changes to the meeting minutes? Actually, yeah. I'm just thinking, I don't see the meeting minutes on the website. Has anybody, I don't think they've been published from our November 10th meeting.
I did
And,
send them out to everybody earlier this week. Apologies
oh, you did?
if they're not on the website.
Okay.
Yep. Pardon me, Jim. And I assume we don't post them to the website till they've been approved. Am I incorrect?
I try to post the draft ones in case you all can't find my email, but apparently that didn't happen. Apologies. We can, if you prefer, Jim, we can wait until next month if you want to make sure people have a.
Yeah, I don't I'm looking on my account, on my email. I don't actually see the draft November minutes. Did anybody else receive them?
I received them.
You did. Okay. You know what? If you guys are okay with it, let's postpone this to the next month, and we'll approve November and December at the same time. Is that okay?
I'm okay with that, though we have a representative from the clerk's office that may know better than I do.
Okay. Okay, so our next agenda item is the call to audience. This is the time when any member of the public may address the Commission on Equitable Housing and Development. Due to time constraints, the total time allocated for this is 15 minutes. Individuals are allowed 3 minutes each. Due to open meeting laws, Commission members cannot discuss topics that are not on the agenda. Items will may be brought up by the public, may be considered as an agenda item in a future meeting. So is there anyone who would like to speak? Oh, shit. Can you guys still hear me?
We can hear you. You have gone dark.
Okay. My internet has, Cox has been having some problems in my office, and my internet has been dropping about every 10 to 15 minutes. So I've dialed in. Okay. Apologize for that. I thought I dropped off the call completely. So is there anybody who would like to speak? All right, we'll move on to the next item. Actually, real quickly before we do that, Anne, I have a note here about we want to do a picture of the commission. What's your thought on how we're going to do that?
Yes, thank you for the reminder, Jim. So in the housing affordability strategy for Tucson, we bring up the commission quite a bit, and we've been wanting to have a good picture of the commission. So we call it the Brady Bunch Zoom picture. So hoping that people, as many people as possible would be comfortable putting your cameras on and doing a Brady Bunch picture, so that we can put it into the housing affordability strategy plan, and then we'll do a screenshot. So would love anyone who is comfortable to put on your camera now, so that we can have a decent photo of the commission, as you all have given a lot of time and energy for this effort.
All right, come on, Marcos.
This is the second time this has happened today for me, that I've had a meeting and they've been like, let's take a group picture. And I'm like, well, good thing I'm wearing sweatpants.
We appreciate the sweatpant look.
Sign of the times, man. Sign of the times,
Yeah, I agree. I'm not comfortable with a photo without advanced warning. So
that's fair. We're calling it the Brady Bunch photo, so it's okay if people aren't comfortable, but whoever is, and Allison and Laura, you're good doing screenshots? All right, thank you all. We appreciate it.
So how does this work? Do we do a countdown and smile, or what's the process?
Yeah, if everyone, Anne, if you want to do a countdown and everyone.
All right, and feel free to wave. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, on to the substance of the meeting.
All right. Okay, so our next agenda item is from the clerk's office and a discussion on the bylaws and the subcommittees.
Yeah, and Jim, I'm happy to do an intro here. So understandably, now that the commission has subcommittees, I've received a lot of questions regarding kind of what the makeup of the subcommittees can be or can't be, and how the subcommittees can or what they can and can't do in context of the full commission. At the same time, I'm mindful that the ordinance that created you all definitely indicated you're supposed to create your own bylaws. And so with those two things in mind, I'm really grateful that Bambi Benitez is here from the clerk's office. So instead of asking me questions that I don't know the answer to, we can ask them to the clerk's office. And so a few things though, keep in mind, Bambi's, there would be more people from the clerk's office here, but they have a training this week on elections. So that's very important. So if there are answers Bambi doesn't know, she had said she'll get back to us on them. What I have been told, and again, wanted you to all to be able to ask the source, is that voting members of the subcommittee can only be voting members of the full commission. So I have been told even ex officio members cannot be voting members of subcommittees. And so wanted to clarify that members of the public and ex officio, of course, are encouraged to attend, are invited to attend, but technically only voting members of the full commission can be voting members of the subcommittees. So that's one clarification I've received, but I wanted people to be able to ask the clerk's office more. And then second is if you have any questions regarding agendas, is it okay, Bambi, that we skipped adopting the minutes for a month, things like that, we can ask. And then in thinking about developing the bylaws, that is my understanding that the commission can clarify how you want the subcommittees to function to a degree in those bylaws. But I'm going to shush now and let you all talk to Bambi. Bambi, did you want to say anything to start?
Sure. Thank you for having me this afternoon. Again, my name is Bambi Benitez. I am with the city clerk's office. I am the office supervisor over the boards, committees, and commissions area in our office. Ana Marufo is our management assistant who is attending that elections training in Phoenix this week. So otherwise she would have been here as well. But like Ann said, if there's questions that I'm not 100% sure on, I will take them down and get the answers for you. And then we can continue this item on the next meeting so we can get you those answers. And just to reiterate what Ann said in regards to the full commission versus the subcommittees and the people on the subcommittees, that is correct. They will be in the same capacity that they are in with the full commission. So they would have to be members that are in full voting capacity that make up the subcommittees for that. As for bylaws, you can also have bylaws, rules, and regulations for the full commission as well, and the subcommittees. They are pretty much, they derive from the Roberts rules that mayor and council go by, and sometimes it's just a few different things. For example, one of our BCCs has with their attendance, instead of missing 4 consecutive and then you're out, if you miss 3 consecutive, then you're out. So stuff like that. They do have to kind of follow along but not be like way out of the box from the regular Roberts rules that mayor and council follow. So with that, I'll answer any questions, take any questions you guys have and answer them to the best of my ability.
I have a question. Does every subcommittee have to have both a chair and a co-chair?
I think that just depends on the amount of people that the subcommittee is allotting to have. I would, a chair, most definitely, so that way there's always someone running the meeting, but I don't think necessarily they have to have a co-chair. You can, in case the person that's chair is out, then that person would then obviously, it's kind of like the same way the full commission is. If the chair is out, then the vice chair would take over. If vice chair or co-chair, however it's named with your commission, is also out, then the group as a whole would nominate someone to act as acting chair for that meeting.
Thank you.
So I was not aware we had bylaws. Can
Well,
we
you-
circulate those?
You don't yet.
If
Oh,
there aren't
okay.
any already, then you don't. I could take a look in my program to see if there's any listed. But if Anne hasn't brought them up before, then more than likely you guys don't already have bylaws.
No, let me clarify. You do not have bylaws yet. In your founding ordinance, it talks about developing bylaws. And so that's something that we've prioritized getting it up and running, but at some point that should probably help in terms of clarifying how, in particular, subcommittees work in context to the full commission, but you don't have them yet.
Okay. So is that something we need to do then over the, whatever period of time here, and does that mean we need to engage some legal help for that, or what's the process for doing that?
I don't, unless you want legal help with that, I don't think it's necessary. If you plan to have a few different subcommittees, it might be a good idea, so then that way they all run on the same page, because the same parameters that go for the full commission pretty much goes for the subcommittees as well. It's just they're smaller and the quorum would be different. And that's probably about one of the main things, but it's a good idea to have have your bylaws for the subcommittees, just so that all of them are acting on the same parameters that you guys would as a full commission.
Okay. And do you ever see the commission having a budget of any sort? Is that I don't.
We do
know
have
these. Go ahead.
So, well, we do have a couple different boards, committees, or commissions that have budgets. I don't know for sure how that works. I would have to get clarification exactly on how that works. For example, the Tucson Pima County Historical Commission, they have their budget because they have different events that happen throughout the year. Another one that has a budget sometimes is the Veterans Affairs Committee. So some of them do have different budgets for different things that they interact with throughout the year. I would have to get double clarification on exactly how that works and how that all would be handled.
Liz?
Do the subcommittees need to wait until the main commission's bylaws have been established to write their own bylaws?
That's a good question. I'm not 100% sure on that. I would have to get clarification on that.
And I mean,
So are you saying that the subcommittee would have their own bylaws aside from the full commission bylaws? Is that what you're asking?
Did I misunderstand what you said, possibly? I might have misunderstood what you said.
It's possible. So if the full commission adopts bylaws, then these would go for the full commission and for any subcommittees, because anything in there would be specific to the full commission and then be specific to any subcommittees that are formed. So then that subcommittee wouldn't then go and create their own bylaws. They would just be from what the full commission had come up with. Does that make sense?
Gotcha. It does, thank you.
And I see Wendy has a question. Jim, you're on mute.
Yeah, I unmuted. Yeah, thanks, Ian. So is there some kind of template for what needs to be in the bylaws, since there are other commissions, even though their scope of work is different than ours, just that we make sure we have all of the necessary elements included in our bylaws?
I can look for another set of bylaws and send them to Anne for her to look over, and then she can get it like a kind of a template going for you all to
That would be
review.
great, yeah. And then I understood what Liz understood, which was that the subcommittees needed bylaws, but maybe we both misunderstood in the same way, and I hear your clarification, Bambi. But do the bylaws for the commission need to include these subcommittees as part of their bylaws? And
So-
what the makeup of those are and what their voting restrictions are?
Yeah, so everything would need to be written out in those bylaws. So they could have a section for what the full commission would go by, and then any subcommittees, if anything other than what the full commission is going by would differ, then that it would be listed on there. Kind of like how the originating ordinances and resolutions that create these boards, committees, and commissions, where it says all, can't remember the exact wording, but it says all parameters in the sense of the Tucson City Code article such and such apply. It would kind of be like that. So it could be listed to, let me pull, I can get that wording right now.
So
Give
like
me
some
one
things would
second.
just be stated as incorporating certain other restrictions and guidelines. So like the things about open meetings and that kind of stuff and notices, that would all be part of the bylaws, but it would be also by reference to other city ordinances and stuff.
Right, so stuff about your like your meeting notices, agendas, your minutes, LARs. So the subcommittees would follow the same parameters that the full commission would with those items. So if there's anything outside of the normal stuff or standing kind of items, then that would need to be spelled out.
Okay, thank you.
So, baby, just so I'm clear, are there action items for us or recommendations on what we need to be doing moving forward here?
In terms of creating the bylaws?
Yeah, I mean, is this just more of an FYI? I mean, it's a little bit gray. So, is there an action item here for us to do?
Yeah, not right now. I don't think there's any action for you to take right now. Right now, it's just more informative because it is a very gray area. So I will provide as much information to you all as a group and to Anne, so that way you guys could have a future meetings, down the road. You could have more talking discussions about how you want to go about this. And then a possible action item, okay, this is how we want to form these. And so you'll have a motion to, all right, at the next meeting, you'll have what everything you had laid out in your discussion, and then to vote and adopt those bylaws.
Well, I guess my opinion on this is, I mean, this is still a relatively new organization. If this is something that we see lasting for, more than 5 years, 10 years, whatever, where commission members could change, there could be, ongoing responsibilities. Having the bylaws is probably a good idea. Just in, if you look at the worst case, plan for the worst and hope for the best. If there is conflict, we can turn to a document like that to get the conflict resolved. And that's part of the reason I was asking if there's a budget, because if there's not a budget, I'm not sure if it's required. If it is something where we think that there will be decisions made going forward in terms of allocating resources financially or something like that, then I think it's probably something we need to do. Is there anybody else on the commission that has thoughts on this?
I can see in my mind this commission lasting until because of interest and potential needs in the economy, et cetera, et cetera. So as far as the bylaws go, I think I'm with you on this, Jim, where we should just create them. And in regards to the timeline, I'd like to create the bylaws for the general commission first before we start looking at bylaws for subcommittees.
Shay?
My personal feeling is that it's kind of a back of house item, and I would rather not take up general meeting time with this and maybe have I don't know, subcommittees. But also, I was just gonna say that another subcommittee, or maybe the subcommittees can take this on. And I think we can start just by like copying, looking at what another commission, a similar, they tend to be pretty standard across the board. So I don't think we have to reinvent the wheel. I think we can make it pretty stress-free and simple, and that would be my preference, and not to take a ton of time with it. But I agree we need them, and we should have them for sure, sooner than later.
I'm with Shay on this. I think that makes sense to me.
Yeah, I agree with Shay. I think we can wait and see what we get as some templates, and then maybe just have what I would suggest would be an ad hoc committee, a small number of people formed to draft it. Not a long-standing committee, but like an ad hoc committee, a committee of just a few people that has the specific task and the specific purpose to create an initial draft and then bring it back to the commission as a whole.
Yeah, I agree with that. Bambi, do you have a sample or a draft from a similar commission that we could use as a starting point?
Yeah, there's let me see. I have one from the Veterans Affairs Committee. Let me pull it up. Give me 1 second.
Okay, we don't actually have to pull it up right now.
Okay.
So
But yeah, I do have some that I could forward on to Anne, and then she can disperse it and share it with you guys.
Okay. Are there a couple of volunteers who would be interested in participating on this committee?
I would.
Since Liz isn't here, I'll volunteer as the Housing First. I think I'm the only person.
Thank you,
on
Liz.
Housing First.
Mark, is that a yes for you? Saw a couple hands who dropped as soon as I asked that question.
Yes.
Yeah, and I said yes also. This is Wendy.
Wendy, okay, that's great. I think if Liz Wilson, Wendy Asher, and Mark Clark have volunteered to help review and bring forth a recommendation to the commission on bylaws, and I appreciate you guys stepping up and helping with this. So there was a couple of hands I saw up before I asked that question, and I want to go back to Jay and then Joe.
Yeah, so Allison reminded me that in November at our subcommittee meeting, we basically made a motion to support some of the policies in HAST. And we were wondering if the subcommittee wants to make a motion or recommendation, does the subcommittee need it to be adopted by the full commission, or is it valid on its own? I think we were, wanting to recommend that mayor and council did something, but obviously it wasn't the full commission, it was just the subcommittee. So how does that work?
So let me see if I understand correctly. So the subcommittee made a motion about something to possibly put forth before mayor and council, and you're wanting to know if that can be done without going through the full commission first.
Yeah, basically, I mean, we wanted to recommend that the mayor and council take out the trash, for instance. So like, did that need to go through the full subcommittee? I mean, through the full commission?
My gut wants to say yes, but let me get clarification on stuff like that. I don't want to give you a haphazard answer with that. But my gut wants to say yes, but let me clarify on something like that, because I do believe, and just trying to think back with experience with one of our other commissions that has a ton of subcommittees, I do believe it does have to come back to the full commission. You like report back to the full commission what your intentions are and what you're wanting to do, and then the full commission would then vote to have it continue going on. But let me double check that.
Thank you.
I mean, that's
Joe?
probably something that we could put into the bylaws just as a clarification. But in most other organizations that I've been involved with, when a subcommittee votes and it's voting members of a larger commission, it comes back to the full group as a seconded motion, and then it's open for discussion, and then it gets voted on. It doesn't need to get seconded a second time.
Thank you, Wendy. Joe?
My question was, since this isn't a huge commission, there's what, 8 or 9 voting members, I think. And most of them have picked one subcommittee to be on, and there's 3 subcommittees. What the limitation means as far as only being able to have voting members of the commission be voting members of the subcommittee. Maybe this is a joint question for Bambi and the chair. How many members do we have on each of the, if that means that limitation, how many members do we have on each of the subcommittees? And what does that mean for the membership and quorums there?
So each subcommittee has, I think, between 3 and 4 voting members, and then several ex officio members.
Not housing first.
Housing has 2?
Yes. So that is a problem.
Right.
So.
Right. We do have one person who is not currently on one of the subcommittees. So we need to get that individual assigned.
Yeah, I think in addition to that, you have 1 vacant seat still, and then the youth member hasn't shown up yet. So I think that's a really good question, Joe, in terms of, given the number of people on the full commission and hearing that only full commission voting members can be voting members. Bambi, I think the situation is some of the subcommittees only have 2 or 3 voting members. So therefore, if 1 or 2 people aren't there, then they can't hold their meeting. And so with that in mind, may need to rethink some things.
Yeah, that is correct. So if it only has 2 members and only 1 is available, then yeah, meeting can't be held because there's no quorum established.
Okay, Marianne?
Being a member of one of the subcommittees, but not a voting member of the commission, I just wanted to voice that I am in agreement with 2 things. One, everybody on a subcommittee votes. Because as a subcommittee member, if I'm spending time on the subcommittee, I want to make sure that I can vote. Otherwise, why would I be on it? And secondly, I think that no subcommittee should be allowed to go to mayor and council, that it has to go through the commission and be voted by everybody on the commission. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with that. Can we make our subcommittees so that everyone on the subcommittee can vote?
I will have to look into that. And so you're talking about like your ex officio and non-voting members, correct?
But it also
Yeah,
seems
even
we-
if they're, we have people who are not on the commission at all who are on some of the subcommittees who, you know, have,
Okay. I'm gonna have to check on that one. That's kind of a big one that I will have to definitely check. So let me understand this correctly so I can, when I take it back to my management. So you have members that are either ex officio or non-voting members that are on subcommittees, and you want the ability for them to be able to vote while on the subcommittee, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then I think the second part I heard about that is there's members on subcommittees that are not members on the full commission, and you want them to have the abilities to vote and whatever. Is that correct?
No, I think what the process proposal is it's a hierarchy, right? So the subcommittee is kind of the lower tier, but people can participate and vote in that. But when it comes to making about decisions for mayor and council and, you know, recommendations, that's the higher tier where only in the general meeting that the, you know, the voting members would make the final call. But I agree, if people are going to be donating their time to a subcommittee, it seems only fair that they should be able to participate in some way, in some meaningful way.
yeah.
Well,
So I think we can make a distinction between voting members of the commission who are on committees who are representing a sentiment of a committee and then have a motion that's brought to the full commission, as opposed to a sense of what a decision recommendation would be. So it has two different functions. One could be coming to the full commission as a seconded motion, meaning that it was something that was voted on at the committee and the voting members seconded it and it moves forward. Or it could be a recommendation based on discussion and decision, and that could be something that comes to the full commission without the same weight as a motion, but with the weight of it demonstrating that this is what the sentiment of the group was. And that way people who aren't members of the commission or voting members of the commission or other members of the community who are on a committee can still participate in a decision-making process and provide a recommendation.
I don't agree with that. I think as somebody who's on a subcommittee and spending time and is sharing, you know, their experience and whatever, that if there is something that the subcommittee agrees that needs to be voted on by the subcommittee, it should be voted on. And that go to the commission. I would prefer that happen versus somebody's sense of what we might be talking about in a motion that we vote on to go forward for an approval or vote from the commission is much clearer than somebody's perception about what was said or the general feel. Now, there are things that that person can report back to the commission on that's a general feel, which is no problem. But for those items that we agree as a subcommittee to vote on, I think that that is exactly what should happen.
And that's something that is what I'm going to check on, because I don't believe that members of the public that attend a subcommittee meeting have the ability to make votes. They can, and members of the public can only chime in during call to the audience. It's not like having a one-on-one with members of the public. So all the parameters that the mayor and council follow is pretty much the same parameters that all BCCs and subcommittees have to follow as well. So if you have members of the public who's like, oh, I'm interested in seeing what this commission is all about, I'm going to attend this next meeting, whether it's a full commission meeting or a subcommittee meeting, their chance to speak about something or what they have on their mind and want to relate to you is during call to the audience. Your agendized items that you guys all speak about, there's not any dialogue between the members of the subcommittee, the full commission, and the public.
And I think this is getting a little bit more complicated than what I intended. The general public who are not members of the subcommittee don't vote, but people who are members of the subcommittee who are actually on the subcommittee and known by the commission should be able to vote.
I
Right, and
understand that.
Bambi, I think that
That's,
the
yeah,
distinction
that's
is,
what,
yeah, the distinction is there have been individuals invited to join the subcommittees who are not part of the overall commission because they have point expertise in what we're talking about. So it's not like it's just a general call to the audience. It's people who have been invited to participate on the subcommittees.
okay, so that's what I'm gonna get clarification on, because if they're not on the full commission as non-voting advisory members because of their expertise or ex officio members, then that's something I'm gonna have to get clarification on, because from what I understand, that person that's not in that kind of capacity, I don't know that they would have that kind of voting capability on a subcommittee. So that's what I want to dive into a little bit more and check with my management about and get you a good solid answer, because I think it is getting a little bit more I'm hearing everything, so I don't know if I'm misunderstanding the different pieces, and it's getting to be a little more complex than what it really needs to be. But I really want to check on the people invited who are either non-voting advisory members, ex officio, or not, that are invited to be on subcommittees, because I don't want you guys to be in any kind of violations of open meeting law.
Okay. Vicky.
Oh, thanks. Just one comment. I wanted to go back to Jay's question about bringing committee recommendations to the full council. And maybe this is something that's addressed in bylaws. I'm just wondering, and I understand that the process that was laid out that is typical. I'm just wondering about time-sensitive issues that come up that a committee may address and have a recommendation, and there just might not be enough time to wait for a full council meeting. I'm just wondering if there are some parameters to empower subcommittees on certain issues to, act on their own. I don't know if that's possible, but I just know through, and of course it's different, a nonprofit board, that's how we wrote our bylaws, to empower committees when it's not possible to take something to the full board, that there could be action by subcommittees when necessary. So it's not really a question. I'm just suggesting that's something that maybe we look at with bylaws and see if that's possible. And maybe time sensitive issues don't come up, but I could see it happening.
Well, potentially if we could do a vote via email or something, is that possible? If there's something that comes up where it has to go through a meeting.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
So if there's a time sensitive item that comes out of a subcommittee that needs to go out before the commission meets, can basically a consensus be obtained through email?
No, I'm going to say no to that one. You can always do like a special meeting. You can always hold a special meeting and agendize that one item. But no correspondence through email.
Okay. So that's the answer, Vicky, is that if there is something that comes up that we need the commission's approval on, we'll call a special meeting. Anne.
Just, I know we probably have to move on, and we can invite Bambi back at the next meeting, and I can offline with you, Bambi, and try to get some clarifications. Just one thing, when you are checking, Bambi, so I was told no to voting ex officio members to voting on the subcommittees because of the way the ordinance was written. And I asked if the commission asks to mayor and council to make amend the ordinance, can then ex officios vote for the subcommittees, and never got a response on that. So that would be trying to peel back the layers and see what is and isn't possible. Second clarification, Jamie, you know this better than I do, but I've been told, and we've been operating, that members of the public can speak if the chair acknowledges them. And that's the case on both the main commission and subcommittees. So that's a clarification I gave based on Anna's interpretation to me.
Okay, from Anna Marufo?
Yeah, so
Okay,
if the chair allows it, they can speak, is my understanding, not outside of call to the audience.
Okay, I will double check that
Okay,
too, just
thank
to
you.
make sure my understanding is on the same page as hers. So I don't know, maybe something changed and I wasn't aware, because I know sometimes a lengthy dialogue can start to happen when that comes about. So I will also double
Okay,
clarify that as well.
Thank you for that clarification too.
Vicky, did you have anything else before we move on to the next item?
Oh, I'm sorry. I just forgot to put my hand down.
Okay. Okay, any final comments or thoughts before we move to agenda item number 5? Okay, so thank you, Bambi. Appreciate you coming and helping us through some of these issues.
You're welcome, and
Okay.
I will do the best to get some answers, and we can revisit this again. So anytime you guys need us, we'll be more than happy to attend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, agenda item number 5 is the subcommittee updates. First subcommittee is the housing segregation. Jay Young's the chair.
Yeah, so can everybody hear me okay? So we had a meeting this morning actually, and talked about a number of things in quite a bit of depth. So we talked first about source of income protection and the importance of source of income protection and kind of what's going on in that on that topic within the city. So, you know, I don't know how much I should go into the different topics themselves, but, you know, basically source of income protection is a way to protect folks who use Section 8 or veterans benefits or SSI to pay for their rent or help pay for their rent and make it so that landlords can't just because of using that particular type of income, they cannot exclude people from housing if they can pay the rent like anyone else. And it is coming up within the city about whether or not to pass a source of income protection. And we talked a lot about, you know, how that would work, the necessary enforcement, and the importance, we believe, of source of income protection as a key piece of making housing more equitable in Tucson and also helping to reduce housing segregation. And basically, what we wanted to bring to the full commission was our recommendation to encourage mayor and council to add source of income protection to the city ordinance, to the city fair housing ordinance, and also just generally to ask for the commission's input on the matter. So put a pin in that, we can come back to it. I also wanted to mention, we talked quite a bit about the scoring checklist that's being developed for affordable housing. And we were able to see it in action. Basically, it's using GIS and it's using a number of criteria that's in the HAST plan to help locate affordable housing in areas of higher opportunity, in areas of lower segregation as well. It's a really great tool. We were very impressed by it. And the idea was basically to have this tool be workable by January. And at this point, one of the, I think, key things that needs to be refined for the tool is that the different criteria that are used to establish a score for where to put affordable housing, those different criteria can be weighted, and they are weighted. And what we talked about is the need to think about how we're weighting different criteria, because obviously that affects the score of different areas in terms of their viability for affordable housing. So we talked about, the need to have input from the community, and particularly folks who are going to be living in the affordable housing, and others for whom this is important to have their input in order to make the tool reflect the needs of folks who would actually be using affordable housing. So that's basically it. We were very supportive of the checklist and just kind of wanted to report back on that. So circling back to the source of income protection and requesting input from the commission, is there any thought or any conversation about source of income protection and kind of where to go as a commission from here?
Liz?
Yeah, I just want to say I really support source of income protections. I think I put it on my application for the commission. And, I have friends who are applying, everyone I know rents basically. I have friends who are applying for rentals, and they are requiring 3 times the amount of rent as your income to get housing throughout the city. And that is not even folks who are receiving subsidy assistance, it's just citywide. So this will benefit, I would say, mid and even high income people as we start to see more renters who are in the like $75,000 a year bracket as well.
So Liz, just so I understand what you just said, you're saying that renters have to prove 3x the rent for their income, or
That
they
is
have to
correct.
put down 3?
No, you have to
And-
have, so I had someone who had to do, it was like a 2-day application process, and they didn't even get the house. And they had to pay for their pets to get screened even. So I mean, the lengths that landlords are going through to make applying more challenging for people, which I would imagine is also a barrier for people who don't have tech literacy or things like that. It's honestly rather astounding.
So Jay,
I want to jump in. I wanted to jump in here. I mean, Liz, I hear what you're saying, and I think that that's certainly an issue, but I don't know that a source of income protection, at least as it's written and proposed, I think as it's being batted around, would really address that issue. Because if everyone is required to have 3 times the income, and that's one of the criteria that a landlord's using, if they have a voucher and then money on top of that, if they still don't have 3 times the income, the source of income protection wouldn't necessarily protect them in that situation, if that makes sense. But again, I think it's all in the language, right? It's all in how the ordinance would be worded. So, that might be a piece of it or something separate that we might want to address as well. So.
Yeah, what's interesting about this is most of the affordable housing projects have income limits where the tenants can't make more than a certain percentage of the area median income to qualify. But I guess I have one question for you, Jay, because I'm not familiar with the term source of income protection. Is that the same as source of income discrimination? Are those two the same, synonymous?
Yeah, so you would make source of income discrimination illegal through a source of income protection. So basically, it's legal to discriminate against people who have a Section 8 voucher. You can literally just say, as a landlord, I don't take Section 8 vouchers. And so though you make the amount of money that would be required to pay rent, you make 3 times the rent if that was a requirement. Whatever the requirements are that you have for anybody who's trying to rent, you can just literally exclude people and say, you know, I don't take that particular source of income. So an ordinance would say you cannot discriminate against somebody just because the income that they have to pay the rent is a Section 8 voucher or a veteran's benefit or SSI income or something like that. Does that clarify it, Jim?
Yeah, so the issue that's trying to be addressed here is that there's not enough properties in the city that are accepting Section 8 vouchers. So there's people with Section 8 vouchers that can't find a place to live because nobody wants to accept them.
That's right.
That's the issue? Okay.
Yeah.
Wendy?
Yeah, so there are cities and jurisdictions where there's local ordinances that say that a landlord cannot inquire as to the source of income, and on top of that, can't refuse a Section 8 voucher. And that certainly doesn't exist in Tucson. And there is a shortage of landlords who will accept Section 8, even though it's guaranteed rental payments. Yeah.
So is there a recommendation that is being made, Jay, or is there an action item here?
Well, I think that's a good question, Jim. I mean, I think one of the other issues that we discussed that I think is really critical for us to pay attention to as a full commission is that the powers that be, if you want to call it that, I mean, the private landlord lobby, you know, a lot of the kind of folks interested in the status quo and not introducing or having laws that increase tenant protections. This is one of their top things that they do not want to see. And so one of the things we discussed and a concern that we have is that if mayor and council takes this on and, you know, we ask them to support it and there's momentum, we are concerned about the potential of the state legislature preempting source of income protections, not only for Tucson, but throughout the state, you know, whether or not we can really do anything about that, or we should just press on and say, you know, this is something that needs to be done and the state's going to do what the state's going to do. I think is something for us to consider. But, you know, I think Ann was telling us that there has not been a study session on this yet from mayor and council. So, you know, I don't know if the timing is important and we just kind of want to keep it in our back pocket and, you know, circle back to it if mayor and council is looking to actually take some action, or so I don't know. It's just some things that we discussed that I think we should think about here as well. So I don't know if folks have thoughts about the, you know, the politics and timing of doing something, but I do think if it makes sense that, you know, I would definitely recommend that we as a commission support mayor and council passing an ordinance to deal with source of income and protect source of income.
Mark?
I had a couple of questions. It seemed to me, based on sort of what we're hearing in the market right now, would a landlord simply, essentially, if they wanted to avoid a public subsidy contract, just jack their rents up over FMR, and then that basically takes the certificate or voucher income off the table?
Can I speak to my experience with that just briefly?
Sure.
Which is yes. And also, I have had situations where landlords have literally done the most, I can't think of a word other than petty thing that they could, which is they literally raised rent by $1 in order for someone with a Section 8 voucher to not access that housing opportunity.
They can also set the unit up so it didn't meet HQS, housing quality standards as well, I would imagine.
And at this point, they can just say, I don't take Section 8. So
no, I understand that. But is there a way that you would perceive that that such an ordinance might address those kind of issues, or probably not?
Again, I wouldn't consider myself an expert on the legalities of, you know, what should go in an ordinance, but, you know, it's definitely something to consider. I don't know if an ordinance could capture that, or again, if that's, a separate issue that we maybe should address. So I'm not sure about that. I don't know if anybody else is.
And then the other question is there another jurisdiction like Tempe or Flagstaff that has a income protection ordinance in the state?
What we saw today, I believe, in some of the information that was provided is that I don't think any jurisdictions in Arizona do, though I'm not positive, but I think there are maybe 85 other jurisdictions throughout the country that do.
Yeah, no, I was talking about Arizona.
Yeah,
So
I don't think so.
Wendy?
Yeah, so on the question of whether or not addressing the increasing in rents, the lack of availability of properties that accept Section 8, I think it needs to rise to the level of a high priority, because at least from my work, I see people who are unable to find affordable housing. It is such a it is such a landlord market right now with housing values going up. We see people getting evicted for relatively petty reasons. We see people who are on month-to-months, who've been on month-to-month rental agreements for years, getting evicted because those month-to-months are being terminated. And it's all because the landlords want to be able to raise the rents prohibitively or do remodeling because the housing values have gone up so much. So it is a crisis. I don't think we can sit around and just sort of wonder what's the best tact. I think we need to really be problem solving around this to be able to give mayor and council some recommendations. That's kind of what our mission is, isn't it?
I'm going to jump in here and say, Jay, thank you for the subcommittee update. I do feel like it's something that we should agendize for the next meeting and maybe focus on that at the next meeting so people can have a better understanding and can be discussed in more detail. What I can do in preparation for that is post resource information to the public website that anyone could see, so that anyone could learn more prior to that subcommittee, or sorry, prior to the next full commission meeting. And then Jay, as he mentioned, is planning on the housing segregation subcommittee will be continuing to talk on this, but I feel like we should move towards having it on an agenda at the next meeting. And also one clarification, we disabled the chat. Bambi might have gotten scolded slightly about the chat, so that is why you're not able to be to put information in the chat.
I was wondering. Okay, thank you, Jay. It was a good update. So I agree. We are starting to push the time limit here. It's 5:04. We've got quite a bit to go through here in the next hour. So let's go ahead and move to the housing first. And Ann is going to present that in Liz's absence.
Yeah, and Liz Wilson, feel free to jump in. Because Liz Morales is out, the one thing she did ask me to throw out to the group, and it's exactly what Joe mentioned earlier, is because there's only a couple members, they're having a really tough time getting quorum to have meetings. So Liz was thinking one of two things, is trying to get additional people to join the Housing First subcommittee, or potentially join efforts with another subcommittee. So Liz Morales asked me to throw that out to the group.
Yeah, I just would like to say that, yeah, if either Mindy or I have anything come up and can't make a meeting, like we had to cancel 2 meetings this last month because one or both of us was unavailable. And it sounds like a lot of what our goal to discuss is being addressed by the Housing Segregation Subcommittee. I don't know if the ordinance explicitly states the number of subcommittees that we are required to have, which was the concern that I rose with Liz Morales.
Okay. Was that a question for Ann or?
I haven't gotten an answer on it. Yeah.
I don't know the answer.
I think
to
it'll
that.
dictate what we can do going forward.
Right. Well, let's wait to hear back from Bambi in terms of, you know, how, if we can invite additional individuals to participate in our subcommittees and the rules around that, and then we'll figure out the best course of action to move forward.
Yeah, I think that's why I liked Marcos's proposal that the subcommittee, like some of the folks we could actually appoint members there that are not the voting members. And that to me would solve the problem of people who are both regularly participating and the quorum issue.
Okay, next agenda item is the affordable housing. Shay and Olga.
We aren't meeting until after this meeting, so we have no updates at this point.
Okay, well, I've got one thing I would like to bring up, if that's okay.
Go for it.
We had to cancel the site visit. And Marianne just stepped out. Oh, there she is. Oh, good. We had to cancel our last site visit, so I wanted to see if we could reschedule that again of the two facilities. And the date I was hoping to put out there is January 6th. The Newport at Amphi project is having the ribbon cutting that day. Those tend to be pretty good ceremonies. It's when the grand opening is. I don't know if there's going to be people living there at that time. I doubt there will be. But my favorite part of going to ribbon cuttings is listening to the tenants speak and just hearing how grateful they are about having, you know, such a wonderful place to live. So, but I think that would be a really good time to do the walk with the commission. Marianne, does that day work for you? You're on mute.
I can make that work. What time is the event you just spoke about?
It's at 9:30. It's at 9:30 in the morning.
Until?
So we probably 10:30.
Okay, so we can set something up for 11 at Downtown Motor Apartments after that.
Mm-hmm.
Where is it? What is the location that you're at?
Prince and Stone.
Prince and Stone. Oh. Okay, so everybody can just drive right down Stone to Downtown Motor Apartments. It's just on the other side of Broadway.
Correct.
Jim, did you say that's January 5th or 6th?
January, I'm actually looking at my calendar, January 6th, I'm going to be out of the country, which is the same day we have our next commission meeting.
Okay. So
I could probably get on the Zoom though, but I will not be attending. Maybe we should try to do it the following week.
I agree.
How does the 6th? How does January 14th, a Friday?
Can we do a
Is that
doodle
better?
poll or something? If that's what's being asked, like, are the commission members available, or if it works with Marianne?
Sure. Why don't I get together with,
I'm open the 13th and 14th.
well, I guess let me just ask, does the 14th work for everybody, a Friday? We could do it in the morning. That's good. Okay, Vicky?
14th of January?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Vicky, you have something to add?
I just had a question, maybe I missed it, but for the visits, are there COVID protocols in place? And what are they?
Well, in our case,
We,
all our staff are vaccinated. Several have boosters, but we all wear masks. And
Yeah.
the tour, people can space themselves out if they need to.
I just personally would not feel comfortable unless there were established protocols. Like, I mean, all my staff are vaccinated too, but if we're ever in a room with anybody else, we require everybody to be masked and socially distanced.
Yeah, yeah, that's what we do.
Newport at Amphi is not open. So, you know, and it's going to be mostly outdoors. So
By
there's not a lot
January,
of people there.
it'll be leased up though, Jim.
You think by November 14th it will, or January 14th?
They'll have people in there for sure. They're trying to get them in this month.
Okay.
That's why I think the opening would be the best opportunity, because it's not going to be fully, it won't be really that crowded.
Okay, I'm happy to do that day. I just won't be able to attend myself. But we could do it January 6th. I'll tell you what, I'm going to follow Liz's recommendation. I'm going to do a doodle poll. And let's get the results, and then we'll set something get something on the calendar here. So Anne, let's go ahead.
Can we also just have like a blank if anyone has any preferred COVID guidelines that they would recommend in that poll?
Yeah. All right. Hey, Anne, I might need your help with that. So can we talk in the morning?
Sure.
Okay. All right. Anything else on affordable housing, Shay? Okay.
No, thanks.
Okay. Agenda item 6 is the affordable housing strategy for Tucson. Anne?
Couple things. So Liz presented, I think it was just after last month's commission meeting, to mayor and council, providing an update on the housing affordability strategy for Tucson. And mayor and council asked that it come back sooner than later in terms of adopting it. So it will be going to mayor and council on December 21st. With that, we've continuing to take public input regarding it. And we will be posting an updated version that has some minor changes based on that input and some refinement. We had questions regarding clarifying some of the actions. And so by early next week, we'll be posting another draft to the website based on that. And then we anticipate it will get adopted and we move into the fun part, which is the implementation. And so with that, Jay mentioned the checklist, and I do want to make sure this commission has a little more context as to what we're trying to do with the checklist. And I'm going to ask Allison to do that in a moment. I do think this is, again, struggling between how much detail to go into in the full commission versus a subcommittee. We're going to keep this pretty general, but we want to make sure everyone's aware of what the checklist is. And if you're interested in providing input and more information, we'll encourage you to attend a housing segregation subcommittee meeting. But I'm going to turn it over to you, Allison.
Great, thanks. So yeah, this is a repeat for the folks who joined the housing segregation subcommittee meeting this morning. And I'm just going to share my screen so I can help myself remember what I'm talking about. So like Anne said, HAST is set to be adopted by mayor and council on the 21st. And as you might remember from reviewing it, policy initiative number 3 was prioritizing affordable housing in areas of opportunity. And one of those specific actions was developing a checklist to prioritize citing those as one criteria for citing those affordable housing opportunities. And so staff has kind of been working in the background to develop a tool, as Jay mentioned, kind of a GIS area ranking tool that can help with those, especially those site considerations that we're talking about here on the left side. And what that kind of looks like timeline wise is developing the checklist in kind of an initial form to be used in some form in an affordable housing RFP to be released in the new year. And then looking at refining that tool potentially with public input or wider input from the full commission over the corresponding the next few months. And so kind of what that looks like is that we've identified data points in three main buckets. One being community, right? Proximity to different assets around the community like jobs and libraries and grocery stores. Two being mobility, so access to transit and bike routes and the walkability of each neighborhood. And then three, focused on deconcentration of a number of things, including deconcentration of subsidized housing, areas of high poverty, and areas of higher than average racial and ethnic concentration. And right, so that'll be one tool in other site considerations like zoning and flood zones. And right, we also have areas of revitalization map that we're considering as priorities for affordable housing. And then there's project considerations in a larger RFP around what target house, what population are you targeting and what's the affordability period, which would be scored separately. So Laura's going to show what that actually looks like, what the tool looks like, the fancy GIS that she's done. But just in terms of if you want more information on the methodology that we used, we can send out the link to the meeting this morning that goes into much more depth about it. But in short, it used an analytic hierarchy process that we're looking to get the housing segregation subcommittee members to contribute to. Because right now it has HCD kind of ranking. HCD staff have contributed to it, but we want a few more people. So we'll explore that tool really quickly and, kind of the feedback, especially that we've been looking for is, we talked through some of the methodology and scoring elements with the housing segregation subcommittee this morning, and particularly, how to refine and improve the tool moving forward. So Laura, and then if I missed anything, please chime in, Anne.
No, you said it, but just triple reiterating this is a draft and based on sort of a preliminary, based on national best practices and our sort of preliminary thoughts going through this methodology. And that's where really looking at the commission to help us in terms of refining that methodology and the values that go into it. Now I'll turn it over to Laura.
Sorry, I couldn't find my unmute button. So are you seeing my screen? You should be looking at an app.
Not anymore. We saw it and then it went away.
Oh, okay. Zoom is weird to me. I'm used to Teams now. How about now?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So like Allison said, we will not go over the methodology this time around, but what you are looking at is a map that has taken in maybe 15 different data sources from various types of mobility and community assets and census data, and ranked according to what we thought was most important for people looking for affordable housing. And the result of that is what you're seeing in these different colors. So you see that things that scored really well in our ranking are in yellow, things that are pretty good are in orange, and then progressively getting worse, so that dark purple is where we would rather not cite affordable housing if we could avoid it. And what we're looking at this tool is a bunch of filters on the left so that you can just look at, I only want to see the areas that are, the ideal locations, or I want to see ideal and slightly less than ideal. You can also filter by ward or neighborhood. You can say, I only want to see what is currently zoned as allowing residential. You can filter by the type of owner. So we can look at just city property. So we might want to say, I want to see all city property that is excellent. And right now you're seeing that nothing is filtering because the internet, it's a web-based tool and it's getting stuck with the internet. Let's see if I can get it going. Nope, it doesn't want to work now, but I think we can still work with what is showing there. Now it's filtered. So you can also click on each parcel and see what was the score. So this one was 88. You can see how it did, the details about the parcel owner, and then the individual scores that were broken down. And you can also search for a site. So maybe you have a project that you're interested in and you just want to see how did it do on the ranking. And this is not showing up because it's not excellent, it is fair. So here we see this is why this property only scored fair. And so far that's the tool.
And so a couple, just jumping in, this is looking at citing affordable housing in areas of opportunity. And so wanted to make sure it's clear, two things are clear. One, that this is different than the revitalization map. And I think both are important. And so just making that, as Allison mentioned, we also in the HAST plan have a revitalization map. And there, the thinking on the revitalization map is those are areas where the city has already committed to investment, and with investment want to make sure that we're keeping access to low-income housing available. And so we do think the revitalization map is important for citing affordable housing. This is different in that looking at areas of opportunities and making sure that there is access to areas of opportunities as that is a national best practice. Other clarification, I've had a few people reach out about being nervous that we're trying to displace people and tell people that they have to move to those areas, and that is definitely not the goal here. The goal is in thinking about new affordable housing projects, how well do they score in terms of being in areas of opportunity. So wanted to at least just give you all a snapshot of what we're thinking, and we'll continue working with really grateful for the Housing Segregation Subcommittee for really thinking through the details and feel like as we're getting down to sort of nitty gritty methodology, grateful that they're willing to be data geeks with us in this, and happy to take questions on the checklist and then also the HAST plan in general.
Vicki?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm confused. Is this a tool that will be online for everybody to use? Because I have concerns about accessibility of the map. I don't see this being accessible to people with visual disabilities and who use screen reader software. So I wonder what the alternative is. It needs to be, there has to be an accommodation for people using screen readers and who can't use the map.
We can work with you on that, Vicki. The main goal, there are a couple main goals for this map. One is to help when the city is investing in affordable housing projects, this will be part of the scoring criteria. And so really it's aimed at developers who are interested in getting support for their projects.
But still, if it's live on your website, it has to comply with the ADA.
Yeah.
So if it was
absolutely.
an internal document, you might get away with it. But if it's posted on your website, it needs to be compliant.
And we do want to post it so that people can see how well that site would score. So we'll definitely make sure we work on that.
Okay, thanks.
When do you anticipate it getting released?
And so we are talking about a phased approach here. So we are looking at putting out our next funding application by the end of January and anticipate this will be a bit of a beta version. This first round based on input from the subcommittee. And so it will either, we want developers to go through the process, but we may or may not include it as part of the scoring this first year. As we refine it and get more public input to roll it out in a way that we feel more confident in for next year. But we're trying to at least get something out there to see how it works and be able to refine it and use it in a way that's meaningful in the next year's funding cycle.
I think it's a great tool. I think it's going to be well received. I'm a little bit worried about the timing, because if the RFP goes out at the end of January, that means people will probably respond in mid-February, which means the rewards will, I guess, come out in March, beginning of March. And so that's going to give the individuals about 2-3 weeks to put the apps together for the state, which is pretty aggressive. So if the timeline could be set so that whatever awards the city is planning to make are done, at the end of February, at latest the first week in March, but at the end of February, I think that's what they're going to need.
And one thing I'll say, as per usual, we're in the situation where this year we feel like the earliest we can get it out is January. For next year, we do plan on having our affordable housing application process be a part of the greater HCD funding process, which will be this fall for the next year.
Right. Okay. Good job, guys.
It's getting there. We still need your all's help.
Vicki?
Yeah, I think it's a great tool, and I don't mean to be a downer, but I don't see that becoming accessible by January. So, I mean, I appreciate the commitment to make it accessible, but I think if we could meet and come up with some timelines, and if you are going to have this live and people using it, there has to be an accommodation statement and a phone call somewhere where somebody can call, get in touch with a human to walk them through it as an accommodation until it's accessible. But I really don't think it should be used in an inaccessible format for very long, because it really creates a liability and opens you up to a potential lawsuit as well.
Would it be accessible if you made a text document available with each parcel and its score?
It has to be available with the tool online, yes.
Like, go
So
here,
basically,
you need a text-based document?
You should be, somebody who's blind should be able to get the same information at the same time as anybody else. So however you figure out to do that, but that's the guideline. And so it can be pretty complicated. And just in looking at the tool, that's going to take some work. That is not an accessible tool right now. And so there are different ways that you could do it, but that is going to take work and money.
Shay?
Sorry, I was, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of, it always feels strange to me to see like basically all the South Side being like, you can't put any affordable housing here. I mean, stuff like that, I start to like, especially because some lower income housing is like actually middle income housing. It's not even like, sometimes you're actually bringing in with light tech projects, you're actually bringing in a higher income client to lower income areas. So it's tricky. And I guess, but I guess what I see this really as being a tool for is for the city to help award light tech monies and dollars, right? And so and I guess what you're saying, and the way this other plan that you have, this revitalization plan, is more about trying to preserve existing affordable housing. Is that how kind of the big picture strategy is?
I would say preserve existing affordable housing, yes, across the board, but preserve affordability in areas that are rapidly, where there's reinvestment and that are rapidly developing. And so that map, I will say, and I hear you, Shay, and will appreciate more input on how to refine it in a way that could reflect those concerns. But the revitalization map does have a bunch of areas on the south side that would also be prioritized for affordable housing to try to keep those areas affordable.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, the BRT line is planned to go all the way down South 6, and why isn't that corridor included? Like, there's just some strange, I don't know. I'm not sure. Maybe it's because it's potential and because it's not built yet, but I think that there could be a little bit more. But that just off the bat, it just looks strange to me to have like an entire area be like, we don't. And I think that light tech projects are really beautiful and they bring a lot of value to neighborhoods and areas, and to not have some in the south side. I mean, there's already a lot of them. There's quite a few actually. And then the other question I have is just, how does this work? And Jim, I'm curious, how does this work in terms of economics? Because basically with this tool, your site development costs just went up, right? Like, I mean, these parcels are going to be more expensive to buy.
Well, potentially. I think ultimately the goal here is to compete with Phoenix and the rest of the state for our share of tax credit dollars. To do that, there are ways that the city can participate in the funding of these projects that will help maximize the score. So it's based on, I mean, there's a lot of scoring criteria, right? But land price is not one of the scoring criteria. So I don't know that it's going to reduce the likelihood per se. Actually, being close to amenities, the shopping, schools, healthcare facilities, all of those things help score a project. And, I didn't spend too much time looking at it, but based on what I saw, it kind of seems like what the city was putting out is pretty much is kind of in line with what the state is trying to do as well in terms of scoring. So, Jay?
Yeah, so I just wanted to say what you were saying sparked some things for me. From a fair housing perspective, just generally speaking throughout the country, I think the reason that the map is like it is because historically in many communities, Tucson may be one, it's just that, low income housing has only been cited in minority neighborhoods. And, there was a lawsuit that went to the Supreme Court about that. So, if we're trying to undo segregation, this can be something that, further segregates communities in a way that I think that we are trying to deal with. But in the same breath, knowing more about fair housing on the national level, I think Arizona, Tucson, Phoenix are a little bit different than, somewhere like Milwaukee or, Oakland or whatever. So, and I think the other thing that I wanted to say is, what we were talking about earlier as well in our subcommittee meeting was the importance of community input to figure out what are the things that are most important in the score, right? I mean, if we think that it should be on bus rapid transit or other things, and for some reason the way the score is allocated is creating it such that it's not a desirable place, though we know that it should be, I think that's where the input comes in about, how are you ranking the different scoring criteria? And what we were talking about this morning is, it's just kind of at first blush, this is the first round of, the scoring criteria. So, that's why we as the Housing Segregation Subcommittee were going to help, give some interpretation to those rankings. But what we were also saying as a subcommittee is the community really needs to be putting a lot of voice into this and what the community thinks is important, and folks that are going to live in affordable housing, what are the amenities that are most important to them? And so, I think that there are the tool is cool, but to me, it needs more refinement so that it is hitting. I mean, you bring up a perfect example of, does the map align with what we think are the values of where we want to locate affordable housing? So I just wanted to throw that in there. And, land prices is another thing, right? It's like, that's often a reason that affordable housing is not cited in areas of opportunity, because the land prices are higher and it's more difficult to make the numbers work, right? I mean, in a really kind of simple view. So anyway, just wanted to throw that out there.
Ann?
So, and one thing, this conversation, a continual challenge we're having is distinguishing and trying to clarify what the goals are of this versus the revitalization map. And I'll say this conversation has really helped me in terms of thinking about that. The one thing I did want to share, this is you can see my map right now. So this is the story map for the Housing Affordability Strategy Plan. This is Action Policy Initiative 3, and realizing we need to label this in terms of what this map is. But this is the revitalization map, separate from the area of opportunity map, in terms of thinking about what are current investments or future investments. And so where do we want to make sure we're keeping housing, we're keeping access to affordable housing. And part of that is the state qualified allocation plan does give points if you are in a revitalization area. So different from the area of opportunity map, that I think we need to do a much better job of articulating what those differences are. And we haven't yet gotten to the point where we're thinking about if they should be scored equally, or one be more than the other. So things to consider that I really appreciate. And so the story map is updated with that map if people have input on that too.
Mary Ann? Mary Ann, you there?
Yeah, I'm here, sorry. So low-income housing areas and just low-income areas deserve to have quality, affordable, safe housing in their neighborhoods. And a lot of those neighborhoods, especially in the revitalization area, don't have that. And that's what tax credit projects bring to areas. And when we're in low income areas and we're building, our neighbors talk to us about how to improve their property. In some cases, we help them. So we're providing good quality, affordable housing in low income areas is not a bad thing. And when we built downtown Motor Apartments that you are all going to see, which wasn't in a low income area neighborhood, we were fought tooth and nail for that, because they simply did not want those people in their neighborhood. And it cost us a lot of money and a lot of time. We did it, and it's beautiful, and nothing that they were afraid of happens. So yes, land prices are going to be more expensive, and also the NIMBYism is going to come into play with this new policy. That's all I got. Thanks.
Okay. So we're going to take one more comment here from Marcos, and then I'd like to move to the next agenda item if we can, in the interest of time. So Marcos.
Yes, thank you. Just briefly wanted to bring up the issue of preservation and the areas on the south side that aren't in the opportunity map, and also notice the west side was not included in the opportunity map. Those areas have some naturally occurring affordable housing, as well as some subsidized high-tech developments and other federally subsidized developments that are going to be timing out and potentially losing, some restrictions that are keeping them affordable. And so I'm just thinking that, there should be, maybe that gets included as a criteria for revitalization, identifying older properties to preserve affordable housing in those areas. And I think that's an important issue right now, as we have a lot of both naturally occurring affordable housing projects that are being purchased and upgraded and losing affordability. And then on the horizon, we're going to have a number of light tech projects that are going to be expiring and are going to be looking to potentially, qualify for a second or third round of light tech subsidy to revitalize the property. So I just wanted us to be mindful of that and see if there's a spot in the plan for preservation.
Yep, I agree. Okay, it's a good comment. All right, anything else before we move on to the next agenda item?
I would just say I really actually like both those points that Marcos brought up, and maybe we can talk about them in more detail at our affordable housing subcommittee, because expiring light text is a huge issue. I know Marcos in your office, Ryan's done a lot of research. He has all the maps and all the GIS data on all that's coming up. So maybe we could even, I don't know, get him to present in one of the subcommittee meetings and talk about us. I would love to talk about a specific strategy for that.
And I know people who would be interested in buying those and continuing the affordability of them. So if you're looking for people who can do that, I've got some who are looking around for it. So, okay, next agenda item is number 7, missing smaller scale development. And I think it's part of the ADU discussion. And Shay, you're going to be leading that.
Yeah, I just think it's another, to me, just big topic that I want to start working on sooner than later. This ADU process has been pretty demoralizing, honestly. I've been really disappointed with, and I just had to say, part of the reason why I started all this work was because I live in the South Side now. Have always grown up in low-income areas. And I just see how, especially during the pandemic, like my mother-in-law just passed with COVID. She was living with us, and sorry, my dogs. And like families can't socially distance right now. Like I saw this casita strategy as a way for families to be able to, respond in crisis, especially. And the pattern that I noticed is that, in times of economic crisis, or like, with the housing crash of 2009 and now the pandemic that we're in, families are overcrowded, but it's that type of data typically doesn't show up on a census map, or because that data is like 10 years old versus, usually the time of crisis is only a few years. So, sorry, it's just, I have a very full house, a very, very full house. And so, I live in a multi-generational way. I know so many friends, family, neighbors who do. I just been so disappointed that all of that work, everything that we had come in, the narrative just felt like it got completely lost and overrun by what I feel is NIMBYism and historic neighborhoods prioritizing their own needs. People who are living in single person households just completely railroaded all of that. And, and I really feel like the end result of like putting more restrictions is like very counterintuitive. People think that the more restrictions they put on zoning and the more restrictions they put on development, the more that it's gonna control developers, but it has the unintended consequences of completely pricing out small scale developers, smaller mom and pop landlords, people who are doing this in a super informal way. Sorry, that's my son howling. First is the dogs, now it's my son. So, basically the unintended consequences of all of this is that I'm a small scale landlord. I have one property, right? I don't generally even have the time or organization to have people sign a lease agreement. Like that's how informal some of these mom and pop landlords like myself are. We're not charging, I don't ask for any fees. I charge no late fees, right? Like how do we support people like me? And and other landlords I know who are in the same boat, who are, the easiest landlords to work with, and we've heard this across the board in the pandemic, have been the small mom and pop landlords. Like they were the easiest to work with, the least likely to evict. And this amendment I saw is totally supporting that demographic. And that narrative got completely lost. All we heard was this fear that large landlords are going to take over and use this. And it's just and I get it. Like I get how, yeah, maybe some people will use this for Airbnb, or maybe some people will use this, but that's not going to be I really feel that the vast majority of people who would benefit from this, and because I do this work and I have a casita in development right now, I'm building one. We're hopefully going to get this project done under a year, between design and construction. It's almost just as complicated. And that's what's craziness to me. Like it should be easier for small local folks to get through the process of building and permitting, design and construction, than it should be for a larger corporate developer. And we've actually created the opposite situation with the way everything has gone. And and I would just like to see, in some ways, especially homeowners, like if you're not a professional developer and you're a homeowner, the technical assistance, you can't even go right now to the over-counter review. Like that was the primary tool that homeowners used, and that's gone. Like it's like the backlog is like, it's just crazy. It's just really intense.
Jay?
Yeah, I mean, I just am 100% with Shay on this. I mean, I also just feel like this is what we're up against. If we want to actually have equity in this community, the neighborhoods that ultimately got this reopened and did all of the things that Shay just mentioned are the neighborhoods that have always had the power. And they, I think, really make the city less equitable than it could be. And for us to have public participation around this issue, and basically, the vast majority of folks who came to the meetings in support and said, yes, let's do this. And then, it's not back channel, right? We can all go to our council members, but the neighborhoods with the power, definitely, like Shay said, bent this to their will. And again, it's disheartening. I mean, if we're really about equity as a commission, this is what we are up against, and this is what we've got to deal with. And, I don't know how we can make our voice as a commission more powerful to sway mayor and council, but, what they did in the end is less equitable. So I guess I'm just concerned for us as a commission in dealing with equity. If, I consider this to be low-hanging fruit as well. I mean, in terms of, making some small changes that could have some small impact. I mean, this is a really small thing. And the fact that, this is how it ended up, it just really makes me pessimistic about how much we're going to be able to move the needle under these circumstances. So I'm 100% with Shay on this. And I just feel like it's something that we really need to wrestle with as a commission. If this is what happens for something that is relatively easy, that, what is it that we're going to be doing going forward, and, how much are we really going to be able to change things? So I feel it's disheartening, and makes me pessimistic about our work going forward, frankly. So that's all I'll say there.
Liz? We can't hear you, Liz.
There we go. Just echoing what Shay and Jay said, this is very disheartening. And I already felt pessimistic about any future opportunities to pursue equity. But this is especially disheartening because, like everyone has said, it's low-hanging fruit. The thing that I did attend some of the education sessions, and it was like everyone had the same kind of two party lines, which were like concern for loss of green spaces, which like, I mean, honestly, if you're concerned about losing green spaces, you should be developing inside of the city instead of expanding more and more outside of the city, but that's an aside. And then also like people literally saying, not in my backyard. Like they were like, I just don't want something this close to my backyard. I don't want someone to be able to see into my backyard. It wasn't just like a case of NIMBYism. It was like, it was literal. And so I am wondering like what sort of future strategies we can have to knowing that like this is something that everyone in Tucson always says. People say, I don't want to see power lines that are super high. I don't want to see you know, aggregate housing that is super high. I don't want to lose green spaces, all these other things. Like it's the same thing every single time. So how can we anticipate that and like respond to it and not ignore it?
Vicky?
Yeah, I just wanted to really agree with what Shay said, and to echo, I mean, I think also taking into consideration what the pandemic has done for the construction and development industry. And I will tell you, I mean, you know, we do home modifications. I am literally begging contractors to bid on home mod projects because there's a shortage of workers, materials. I mean, there's such a backlog, and what they're doing is prioritizing all of the big projects. And I guarantee you those big projects are not in low income neighborhoods, and they're not for my low income disabled participants. And I mean, literally months I have begged and done personal phone calls. And we keep reaching out to more. And what we get is, you know, there's this backlog, and they've literally said they're prioritizing those big projects because they need all of their supplies and workers for that. I guess I'm not really providing any answers except to say that, you know, I think it's a sign of what's going on. And if we're just creating even more barriers for contractors and developers in low income neighborhoods, I feel like we're going backwards.
Yeah, I just want to add to, I was really inspired by the Strong Towns talks that were put on, and they talked a lot about lowering the barriers to entry. And I feel like that's absolutely what needs to happen for small local developers, especially. There's a whole informal building economy. I've been blessed to have grown up with both building economies. I was trained and very much know the professional world of building when it comes to working with, you know, developers and architects, engineers, and all that. But there's also a very informal building economy that's like remodels, flippers, people who do a lot of work without even permits, because what they're doing is pretty minor renovations, but they still interact with those systems of, you know, they're still, it's very much two different building economies. And I feel like the small building economy, which is TIs, you know, commercial tenant improvements, remodels, additions, stuff that shouldn't take a lot of time or expertise, is taking now just as long as these large, you know, very professionalized projects. And that to me is just, again, it's just there's a kink in the system. We don't have enough staff. I realize, I know planning staff, city staff is super stretched. The pandemic messed everybody up. But also I think just the way that things are structured. I left a ton of comments on PDSD right now. They're having a visioning session. If people want to join, you can leave comments right now and talk about PDSD. And I left a bunch of comments about how I feel that they could restructure themselves. Again, some of these questions are really about development services and less even about like, but it's all related, right? Like it's all related.
Well, if I can make a comment, I'd like to think that that what we're doing here is not a waste of our time. You know, on the positive side of things, you know, I've talked with the mayor this last month, and I can tell you she's very appreciative of what we're doing. I know the housing department, Ann and Liz and everybody over there has been extremely supportive, and we do have their ear. And I do believe that, you know, we are gonna do good for the community, and we're gonna make a positive impact and a positive change. So, you know, I guess my comment, Shay, Jay, Liz, you know, Vicky, for those of you who are frustrated with this, let's try to take it as a learning experience, and figure out what we can do differently to make it better, and you know, put our heads together and try to turn this into some sort of a positive. And I understand your frustration, but I don't feel like what we're doing here is a waste of time. And I do appreciate you guys being here and being involved. Shay, is it okay if we, just in the interest of time, if we go to the next agenda item? Or Corin, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to weigh in a little bit, and I appreciate everyone's comments. Many of you are really involved in the process. I think we did hear from a pretty wide cross-section of Tucson. I think that was one of the positives of this ADU project, was I think we reached a lot of people who I haven't heard as involved in, you know, zoning conversations and those things that can feel a bit abstract and removed for a lot of people. So I think one of the things we've been thinking about in planning and development services is just, you know, how can we keep a lot of folks interested and engaged on these topics? And I think a lot of that actually falls on this commission a bit. And I think that, you know, I think there's a lot we can do to be intentional about outreach and creative about how we are reaching folks and involving different voices in future conversations. I mean, I think EDUs was really kind of just the beginning of what I expect will be a lot more conversation about how to change our zoning to make it more accessible. As you said, Shay, how can we make it lower the barriers to entry so it's easier to build, especially for smaller scale developers and property owners, but also for affordable housing across the board. And a lot of those strategies are included in the housing affordability strategy for Tucson, the HAST. So I think it will really kind of be incumbent on this commission in a lot of ways to help implement a lot of those strategies in the HAST, and to support each CD in doing that, and you know, bring in your expertise and your community connections and voices. But I think we kind of have a roadmap for some next steps in the HAST that we can think about and build on, you know, some of the conversation that started around accessory dwelling units.
Okay, thanks, Corin. So it is 5:59. We are getting short on time. So next agenda item is number 8, the housing updates. Ann?
Yeah, I'll be super quick, but 2 updates I do think that are worth mentioning before next month. One is the American Rescue Plan partner dollars that are going to be released via an application. My understanding is that's supposed to go out tomorrow. And so I bring it up because there is funding for housing, there is funding for small scale housing, there is funding for affordable housing development, there is funding to help rehabilitate and or revitalize manufactured homes. And then there's funding for a resource connection to try to help people get connected to rental opportunities. And so I will send out once it goes live, and today I was told they thought tomorrow, but as soon as it goes live, I will send that link out to the commission. Please let people know that it's available. There will be workshops on it, and you know, housing is one piece. I know that there are people on this call that are interested in a lot of topics that touch housing. There'll be arts and culture is one of the topics, a lot of workforce development money, and I just think it's an incredible opportunity for our city. And so we'll be sharing that link as soon as it goes live. So that's one. 2, I really appreciate this conversation today, and and know that change can be slow. I am seeing some positive things on the city side in terms of thinking about development. And so the second announcement is we will be hiring an affordable housing development manager. And so that person will be in charge of advancing, essentially trying to help implement HAST and really trying to advance the city's goals when it comes to affordable housing. And so I am hoping that position will be posted next week. And so please share that with whoever, and hoping to get somebody with some development experience that can really help us move forward. We have a bunch of projects that we're trying to advance on city-owned sites. And so that person will be vital in trying to move those forward. So those are my 2 announcements.
Thanks. Any questions for Ann? Okay, next agenda item is number 9, next steps. So our next meeting is January 6th at 4 o'clock. And I'd like all the subcommittees to try to meet before then. We've talked about the site visit. A doodle poll is going to be going out. Are there any other agenda items that we want to add to our meeting next month? I think, Jay, you had one for income protection. I would like to see that as an agenda item. Anything else? Okay. Well, good spirited conversation today. Believe it or not, we have been meeting now for 10 months. And yeah, so we're coming up on a year here. And I wasn't sure. Is my appointment a 1-year term, or is it longer?
I think they're all, you all are stuck with us forever.
No, mine is chair.
Oh, chair, good question. And again, I think without bylaws, we're winging it. So that'll be up. That's something I think maybe we should agendize for the next meeting.
Okay, well,
I just looked at the rule book and it says you have to continue, Jim, until they tell you no more. So.
All right. Well, I don't know if I've upset anybody too badly so far, but it will happen if I'm here long enough. I can tell you that. So, anyway, so it's been good for me. It's been a good learning experience, and you know, my motivation, as I said when I first started in joining this commission, was to help get Tucson a more affordable housing, and I still believe we can meet that goal. I feel like we haven't gotten our fair share when you compare us to Phoenix and the number of affordable housing projects here compared to what's happening in Maricopa County. And I think we are doing a lot of things well, and we won't know the results of those until mid next year. But I do think the city is engaged. I think there's a lot of positive things happening, and we probably need to do a little bit better job tooting our own horn on those things. So, but anyways, with that, we're gonna close the meeting, and we are now adjourned. Thank you, guys.